Hey there YouTube, JRulerSparks here to bring you another Force of Will deck tech. This video, as always, is brought to you by fowhub.com. That's FOWHUB.com. It's your source for news, videos, deck list for old and new players alike. Also brought to you by Top Deck Keep, my local game store. They sell both sealed and singled Magic the Gathering and Force of Will products, so definitely check both of those guys out. I'm really happy to be partnered with the two of them. So, as I said, this is going to be a deck tech. I just have Ishtar over here in the corner because she's kind of our mascot and is looking fantastic as always. We're going to be doing a Yamada combo deck. You're probably familiar with some Yamada combos. This one functions more or less like the standard Book of Ibond one that you may be familiar with. However, it got a lot of new toys with the Moonlit Savior, so I've been playing this last couple weeks. I wouldn't say this is the most competitive deck tech, but it is definitely powerful, and if you know how to play with it, it can do quite well. I went to one local and went undefeated with it, and have done quite well at other locals as well. With that, let's get into it. As usual, our ruler here is Reflect. You know, it's just hard to say anything new about R&R at this point. It's an amazing card. It does everything you want, and especially in a combo deck, this is pretty much a must-have. Being able to filter through your deck quickly and even search for a card is just absolutely invaluable. So I won't spend any longer on Reflect. Let's get into the deck. Starting off with our stones here, we have one magic stone of Blasting Waves, 2 magic stone of Scorched Bales, 4 Ruler's Memoria. Having the mana or the will of the color that we need when we need it is extremely important in this deck. And we have 2 Magic Stone of Moonshade, again for more additional fixing. And then lastly we have 1 Little Red, the Pure Stone. It's just a really great card. Although it doesn't give us any type of will fixing, we're going to be calling fire on this all the time. It'll help with our Lancelots as well as our Yamada if we don't have every combo piece. So this does a lot of work for us. And just so you know, we actually do have slightly more wind in the deck than we do darkness. The reason we have 2 Magic Stone of Scorched Bales is because having double dark is extremely important, whereas we really only need 1 wind will at a time, but we just need to have the darkness. Alright, so moving on to the main deck, starting off with our Regalia here. We have 4 Change the World orbs. As I've said previously, 4 is pretty much a must-have in any R&R deck. It just allows you to build up counters really fast, and is really important, especially in this deck, because it lets us tutor, or search as quickly as possible. Moving on, still with Regalia, we have 4 Laevateinn, the Demon Sword. This is important for a couple reasons. Number 1, we just need critical mass of Regalia. Because we have 4 of those Ruler's Memoria, we can't chintz on the amount of Regalia. In fact, we only have 8 in the deck, You might feel comfortable bumping this up to even 10. However, I felt the deck functioned quite well even with the 8. You just have to mulligan aggressively to make sure you're starting with at least one Regalia. So this gives our ruler or our JRuler swiftness. This is really important. We can flip over and search for a card right away. Sometimes we just need to get that last piece of the combo. It also allows us to discard to make an extra red will or fire will. This is really handy sometimes. It allows you to come out with the combo really fast before they can really set up to do anything about it. Generally that's not going to happen, but once in a while you just get to steal a game really quickly with that. Moving into our 1-drops, we have 4 Rukh Egg. Rukh Egg is great for everything. It allows us to buy a little bit of time, and it combos really well with our next card, Guinevere, and lets us search up Yamada. In fact, if you're looking for ways to customize the deck, you might even be able to cut one Yamada simply because you can search for it with the Rukh Egg. So we effectively have 8 copies of Yamada in the deck. So as I mentioned, our next card here is Guinevere. Guinevere is probably, if you're going to mulligan for the combo pieces, the 2 cards that you want to make sure that you have in your hand, no matter what, at the beginning, is 1 piece of Regalia and 1 Guinevere. We need Guinevere to be able to discard Yamada from our hand. This is very important. She's also a 1-drop, so we can play her right away. In our ideal game, this is our turn 1 play. Even more than Rukh Egg, because we can play the Rukh Egg and then just sack it right away. And we need her to discard Yamada. In a perfect world, you won't be discarding the Yamada until the turn you're actually going to reanimate it. But in any case, she lets us dig through the deck and is essential to the combo. For our next 1-drop here, this might be something that is a little unexpected. We have 4 Heartstrings Sage, but this is one of the new toys that Yamada combo got in Moonlit Savior. You might think this is kind of ridiculous and just sort of cute, but it is actually very effective. I originally played Yamada combo thanks to Six Sages Gaming, actually, when I very first got into the game back in Christmas. And they had a deck spotlight on the Digital Underground deck. That used Cheshire Cat and Humpty Dumpty to cheat in Yamada. I took that to Grand Prix Pasadena and got 33rd out of almost 200 people. So thank you to Six Sages Gaming for posting that. So I've been a big fan of Yamada combo for a while, and that was a water, light, and wind deck. And then sort of the faster version of the combo ended up being fire, darkness, and generally that was paired with water. The problem with the original Digital Underground deck is that it was a little bit slower, and if you wanted to be able to blow them out in one turn, you needed to be able to use the Rapid Growth, I believe it's called, which is the pump spell with Remnant. And so you just needed a lot of will in one turn to be able to pull off the combo. This guy gets around that because you can tap him without using any will at all to pump up Yamada's attack. And it doesn't just pump it up by 200 or 400 or something like that. It makes his attack equal his defense. So with Yamada, this is really insane because it makes his attack 2,000. And it just ensures that there is no way that they can possibly live through the combo once Yamada starts attacking, even if they have a pretty big field. Because only 2 attacks have to actually get through, and you win. This guy can also do some damage on his own. So if he's your turn 1 play, you can totally just tap him on your untap step, or on your draw step rather, and then he's going to untap with an attack of 600, and you can just swing in there for 600 damage. So 600 damage for a 1-drop is not bad. Moving on, for our last 1-will spell, we have 2 Necromancy. This was an essential part of the later Yamada combo that I mentioned, which was with Darkness and Fire. So the key is to get these into the graveyard, and then when you bring out Yamada, this gets pulled out of the graveyard and attached to him, boosting his attack. This was definitely an enhancement to having to use Rapid Growth. However, it made it so you had to discard 2 cards. You had to discard both the Necromancy and the Yamada to be able to get this to happen. And even then, his attack was only boosted by 200. Of course, then you get the free boost from Refrain as well. But it was still possible for them to live through it. That being said, this is still valuable. You're not always going to have the heartstrings Sage. You know, games play out differently. And it can also be very useful for our Lancelots, which we'll see in a second later. So it's possible that if you're looking to customize the deck, that these could come out in favor of some other type of tech. But I wanted to play with them, and they did do some work for me. Just adds a little bit more consistency and resilience. So speaking of Lancelot, here we have our 4 Lancelot. Lancelot is great because it gives us a plan B. Probably the hardest part of playing this deck is simply knowing what games you have to kind of abandon the combo on, okay? Because there are games where that just isn't going to work. You know, you're not getting your pieces fast enough, or they've played something that's really disrupting you, and you have to know at what point in the game you're shifting to just beat down. If you play properly, you can win the game just off of Lancelots. You know, you can use him as removal as well as a lot of damage. Actually, I should say her, since I have the this version of the art. And you can keep searching up more with your Rukh Eggs, or with the search ability from Refrain, and you can totally just beat down and control the board with Lancelot. Again, it's the plan B, but it's just another thing that they have to deal with, and can definitely end games on its own. Moving into our 2-drop spells, we have 2 Flame of Outerworld. This is pretty much just the premier removal spell. Flame of Outerworld can't be chased, so whatever you target with this is going to die, and there's nothing they can do about it. We do need a little bit of control, and this is pretty much our best options. Our last 2-mana spell is a field, or an addition field, and that is the Secluded Refuge. So as I mentioned, this is another one of the new toys that this deck got from Moonlit Savior. This is a really, really good card. So one of the advantages that the original Digital Underground deck had was that it could play Realm of Pure Spirit, which made it so your untapped Resonators couldn't be targeted by spells or abilities. And since Yamada doesn't tap to attack, it just made him impossible to remove. And then in the new version with the Fire and Darkness version, it was much quicker than the original Digital Underground. However, it was a lot more vulnerable, because if they did have like Reflect flipped over, they could just bounce him, or if they were holding a stoning to death, they could kill him. So it was a lot harder to actually get through. So this kind of fixes that. Going with Fire, Darkness, and Wind allows us to do the faster combo, and we have a lot more tech and protection. So what this says is when it enters the battlefield, it draws a card. So it helps us cycle through the deck faster. That was another cool thing that the old deck had, was the rewrite laws, which is something you may want to try and fit in here, although I didn't find it to be necessary. It allowed you to cycle through the deck faster. So this kind of serves the same purpose as rewrite laws and Realm of Pure Spirit, because if they ever target any of your resonators with a spell or ability, you can sacrifice this, and then you can cancel that spell or ability. So if they try and mess with Yamada, this protects them, and when it enters, it draws us a card. It's a fantastic card, and is an excellent update for Yamada combos. Moving on to our 3-drops, we have 4 Book of Ibond. So this is the other essential piece of the combo. The Book of Ibond is another addition field, and when it enters the field, we can return a resonator from our graveyard to play. So we use the Guinevere to discard the Yamada, and then we play Book of Ibond, brings back Yamada, and Yamada can start swinging in. So, by the way, some people are confused on this once in a while. If this gets destroyed, so does Yamada. However, if Yamada gets destroyed, this just stays on the field, and it just doesn't do anything. It just sits there, and you just have a random addition. But anyway, so that's our way of actually bringing Yamada back. Then we have for Yamada himself, Yamata-No-Orochi, the 8 Disasters. So he is a 202,000 10-drop with swiftness and target attack, and attacking doesn't cause him to tap, and he can attack 8 times. So this is what we're trying to kill people with. So just to show you exactly what the combo is, we need one of these, and we'll pull out one of these as well, and one of these, and one of these, okay? Now, not all of these cards are absolutely essential, but I'm just going to kind of show you if we really got everything out perfectly. This is what we have. If we don't have Yamada in our hand, we can absolutely use a Rukh Egg to search for Yamada. Okay, if we already have Yamada in our hand, we don't need to worry about it. In any case, for turn 1, we'll say we play Gwen, and then turn 2, we're going to play a Heartstring Sage, and if we were able to discard a Laevateinn for a second Red Will, we can also play the Secluded Refuge. Then on the 3rd turn, we sacrifice Gwen, discarding Yamada, and then we play the Book of Ibond, brings him back. We tap the Sage, which makes him have 2,000 attack. He's got protection from the Secluded Refuge, and he can just swing in and kill them. So that's sort of our ideal scenario. And you kind of have to know, like I said, when to go for the combo and when not to. Sometimes it's great to just try and slam it on the 3rd turn if you can, or at latest the 4th turn, and you can get in there. Sometimes you need to make sure you have the Secluded Refuge. Other times, you know, if they're not playing Darkness, or they haven't flipped the Reflect to have the bounce ability, you can just flip him over, or you can just reanimate him and not even have to worry about having Wind Secluded Refuge for protection. Other times, you know, you need to take your time, set it up. Sometimes you need to just swing in with Lancelots and not worry about Yamada. It just takes a lot of practice, honestly. It will take a bit to learn how to pilot the deck correctly, but once you learn how to play it, you are doing something that's more powerful than anybody else is doing. So getting into the sideboard here, we have one Prison in the Lunar Lake. This is sort of random. This is our only water spell. However, we do have 6 sources of water will, and we can totally just play this face down as a chance standby and trigger it without even having to pay the blue will. The cool thing about this is that it's extremely good against Alice's World, because it is a huge blowout against Adam Brawley. And Alice's World is, if it's a good player, they know that they need to play around Sign of the Future. And so if you lay down a chance standby, they're going to make sure that they don't play more than 2 more Resonators than you have. But they're not going to see Prison in the Lunar Lake coming. So when they sack their 2 guys and play Adam Brawley, you flip this over, and you negate his effects and destroy the Adam Brawley and effectively get a 3-for-1 and likely stop them from being able to bring out Guiber. So this is an extremely good sideboard card. You might want to fit more in. I'll tell you right now, this sideboard was made mostly just on things that I thought were interesting to do. So depending on your local meta or how really competitive you want to be, you might want to customize this sideboard. Then I have 2 Death Scythes here. This is of course really good against any JRuler centric strategy where they're trying to kill you with their JRuler. One of the things I don't have in here, but is always a great pair with this, is Blazer, and that's one of the things that I might recommend bringing into the sideboard. Then we have 2 Marybelle, okay? Your biggest threat is the flute, or it's not actually called a flute, it's the Horn of the Sacred Beast, because that makes you shuffle your graveyard into your deck, so it messes up your combo. So having some really cheap Regalia hate, like Marybelle for only 1 mana, you can banish this and destroy a Regalia. So you can get rid of their horns if they're siding those in against you. So a lot of times this is kind of some counter sideboard tech, and so this is really valuable. Depending on how many people you know are playing horns a lot, you might want to up your Marybelle count. And the reason we're playing that as opposed to Hera is simply because it's faster, it only takes 1 will, and that can make a big difference, and it's harder for us to cast Hera as well. Then we have 1 Horn of our own. This is always good for the mirror, as well as just messing up Dark Alice and other random strategies. Can be good in grindy games. So I like to have an access to 1 Horn at least. Then we have 2 Susanoo, the 10-Fist Sword. Again, this is really good against Alice's World. If they do get a Guiber out, we can smash the Guiber with these. It also can be good against Sylvia, although a lot of times I feel like if they have flipped Sylvia, you're probably dead on that turn, so I'm not really sure this is all that effective against her. Then we have 2 Robe of the Fire Rat. This is just kind of a must-have in the sideboard, frankly. for any deck. You're kind of forced to play fire because playing against fire is just really hard without Robo the Fire Rat. You know, this is invaluable against Lancelot, and is just basically repeatable removal against fire decks. The next 3 cards here are just kind of a personal choice. So we have Yggdrasil the World Tree, and Alice and Excalibur. So I won't get into explaining this combo too much. I'm assuming you kind of know how that works. If you were trying to make this the most competitive, I'm not sure this is really what you would want to take up 3 slots of your sideboard in. But if you're playing against a deck that isn't Reflect, so they can't just bounce Alice, this can really mess people up. I played against a few decks over the last couple weeks that wasn't playing Alice, and a lot of times they just have no way of beating this. Like if you play against like a mono red like Bahamut, generally they just can't get through this, and you just have all the time in the world to find Yamada and kill them that way, because Alice will just protect you. The last part of the sideboard is the Phantom of the Primogenitor. So this is sometimes something that you want to just automatically bring in from the sideboard. So you might want to consider automatically bringing in these 2 Phantom of the Primogenitor with the 2 Marybelles in every single game 2 and 3, because once they see what you're doing, they're gonna really try and mess up your combo, so you can't reanimate Yamada. So this gives you an out. They're generally not going to see this coming. You know, they're going to be focused on trying to disrupt the combo, and that's fine. You just take your time a little bit, control the board with Lancelot as best as you can, and then when you have the will, you just slam Yamada from your hand with this, and there's absolutely no way for them to disrupt that. So this is a really good route of kind of getting around their normal combo disruption. So that is the Yamada deck. I hope you liked it. I really enjoy playing Yamada combo. I've played a lot of different versions of it. I think this is probably the best version of it you can be playing as far as like the core of the combo. You know, not necessarily all 40 cards are exactly what is the best, but I believe that this is the best base that you can go off of. So let me know if you liked it. As always, thank you for watching, and say goodbye to Ishtar, and I will see you in the next video.